Welcome to my video on vertical angles. So vertical angles are the angles across from each other when two lines cross. So vertical in this case means they share the same vertex or corner point, not the usual meaning of up and down. In this example, A and B are vertical angles. So A equals B, so vertical angles are always congruent. So if A was 30 degrees, then B would also be 30 degrees. And then, of course, if we called this, go ahead and label this angle C, would be congruent to angle D. And we could use these two measurements to find the missing degrees of C and D, because all the way around vertical angles is a full circle, which we know is 360 degrees. So we could take away these two angles, and that would give us 300 degrees, and then 300 divided by 2 would be 150. Okay, so let's look at our example below. Find angles A, B, and C below. So we know that if this is 40 degrees, then B is also 40 degrees. Because B is opposite 40 degrees, it must also be 40 degrees. And we know that a full circle is 360 degrees. So that leaves 360 minus these two angles. And we know that 40 times 2 equals 80 degrees. And if a full circle is 360 degrees, we can do 360 minus 80, which from up here we know is 280. And then we can divide that by 2, and we get 140 degrees. So angles A and C are also vertical angles. So that means they are congruent. And we just found that they're 140 degrees each. So we can put 140 here and 140 degrees here. So let's answer our question down here. That means A is 140 degrees, and B is 40 degrees, and C is 140 degrees. Okay, let's look at our last practice problem on the bottom there. It says, what are the measures of angles A, B, and C below? Well, we know that these are vertical angles here. So if this is 130, then we know that B is also 130 degrees. So we can go ahead and write that down here. And so we know that together, the two angles that we know, 130 times 2 would be 260 degrees. So now we can subtract that from 360. And that will tell us what the remaining two angles are. So the remaining two angles are 100 degrees. But there's two of them, so I need to split that up. So 100 divided by 2 is 50 degrees. So I know that A is 50 degrees. And I know that C is 50 degrees. So I can go ahead and fill that in down here as well. So 50 degrees and 50 degrees. Okay, turn the page and let's do some practice. And I'm fine with this practice if you want to go ahead and pause the video and try these and then turn the video back on to see how you did. if you turn the video off, welcome back, and let's see how you did here. So it says, name the two pairs of vertical angles. So I see one here, I see one here, I see one here, and I see one here. So let's call this angle JNL, and its vertical angle is MNK. And then, of course, we have here, we have JNM, angle JNM. And down here, we have angle LNK. LNK. Okay, it says use the diagram to tell whether the angles are vertical angles. Okay, so we have angle 1 and angle 2. Are those vertical? The answer is no. And actually, what are those? Good, those would be adjacent, okay, because they're next to each other. Okay, so number 3 is no. Number 5, 1 and 3. So let me get my highlighter and let's highlight that. So 1 and 3. And the answer is yes, those are vertical angles. Okay, now we're looking at 3 and 8. So here's 3 and 8, and those are not vertical angles. And I went out of order here. I went 3, 5, and then 4. Oops. And then number 6, angle 1 and 5. So here's angle 1 and angle 5, and the answer is no, those are not vertical. Remember, in order to be vertical, they need to share the same vertex and be across from each other when the two lines cross. Okay, let's look at number 7. Find the value of x in degrees in the diagram below. So if this is 105, we know that this is 105 because they're vertical angles. So 105 degrees. Number 8, the following diagram shows an equilateral triangle. Find the value of x and z in degrees. Well, in an equilateral triangle, we know that they're all 60 degrees. And these are vertical angles, so if that's 60, this is also 60 degrees. And if this is 60, we know that this is also 60 degrees. So we know that x is 60 and z is also 60 degrees. Okay, let's look at our last and final example. Find the measure of each angle in degrees. So if we know that this is 65, then we know that this is 65 because they are vertical angles. Now remember, we know that vertical angles like this, if I go all the way around, make a full circle. So we can do 65 times 2. So that we know that those two angles together are 130 degrees. And that does not look like a 5. There we go. And we can take 130 away from 360. And that gives us 230 degrees. And we know that these two angles are the same. So I can divide that by 2. And I get 115 degrees. So x is 115. And I can put that in here. And we also know that z is 115 degrees. And I can go ahead and write that up here. So remember, vertical angles share the same vertex. And the angles are across from each other when the two lines cross. That concludes our notes on vertical angles. I hope you have a great day.